We're here to talk about Ben's book. Ben, so Julia, if you're here, our producer, get a screenshot of this. I had to miss Ben's book talk here in DC because I was testifying in Congress. But as my consolation prize, I get to have my dear friend on Coffee with the Contrarians. As you know, Ben, because you're a regular, the people are pouring in. We'll wait till formally start the conversation. I have so many questions to ask you, and I actually had Maggie Haberman. You'll soon be dethroning my friends Maggie and Jonathan at the top of the bestseller list. But I had Maggie yesterday. She diagnosed with regime change the crisis, the problem. This is the solution. Solutions is so many. So I'm super excited to talk about it. But Ben, in the small talk portion, tell us how the book tour has been going.
It is so much fun, and there's so much coffee. This is indeed Coffee with the Contrarians this morning, and I hope everybody is caffeinating as aggressively as I am, because we got a lot to dig into here. So good. I'm in Cambridge today. We had like 300 people at the Cambridge Public Library. We were at
Amazing.
Politics and Prose on Tuesday. Nancy Pelosi and Judy Woodruff joined me at Politics and Prose, and we dug into it. It was such a good conversation, and if you want to make change, you have to win elections. So we dug into exactly how to do that, and we'll talk about that today. And then I've just been bouncing between studio to bookstore to party to studio. The Daily Show with Jon Stewart was really fun. He got really excited. I feel very personally proud. He came in before and told me this. Then he said it on air that he used to be in favor of keeping the filibuster, and the book convinced him to realize that it needs to go. So I feel, if nothing else,
amazing,
a critical person that we need to make some change. And we multiply that out across all the readers of the book and the folks, the contrarians watching right now, who already know about how to get involved in the fight for a better country, then I think there's a path out of this mess.
Ben, the crisis that we're in now calls for bold solutions. But one of the things that I love about your book is that you're not only focused on today, but the plan takes us across multiple years. And part of your success in Democratic politics and the transformation of Wisconsin is that, unlike many in politics, you're not living day to day or even election to election. You have a long-term trajectory. So just while we wait for those last few people to trickle in, oh, here they are. Okay, we're going to formally move out of the green room portion and into the official Coffee with the Contrarians, featuring our wonderful friend of the Contrarian and friend of democracy, and my colleague Ben Wikler, and his book, This is the Plan: How to End America's Meltdown and Save Democracy. And friends, you can get it at an independent bookseller anywhere near you. You can get it online in multiple outlets. Anywhere where outstanding books are sold, you can get This Is the Plan. And I'm going to start and end by saying this. I've written 6 books. I've done 6 book tours. Those first week book sales are so important to setting an author and his or her book on a trajectory. So Ben is a member of the Contrarian family. If you haven't ordered This Is the Plan, please do it now. You can even shrink your Contrarian screen and go in order while we're talking. I'm going to ask you again to do it at the end. Ben Wikler, what is the plan?
Well, you might notice that there's a fire extinguisher on the cover of This Is the Plan. And the reason for that is that the country is on fire right now. Contrarian viewers, members, this community knows that we are in a moment of national crisis and emergency. And the plan is to recognize that it is not enough to win one election, to defeat one person, however disastrous that person might be. The plan needs to be zapping the structural problems in our democracy that allow the right to leap further and further to the right and leave everyone else in the dust, to enrich and empower those at the very top, Donald Trump and his MAGA billionaire friends, and let everyone else pick up the pieces. And we know how to do this because we did it in my state, which was hit with a mini version of Project 2025 starting in 2010 when Scott Walker and the Republicans came in. All the stuff Trump's doing nationally now, they did first in my state in Wisconsin. And what we realized is that if we want to get out of that mess, we need to build a permanent campaign. We need to build a community exactly like the contrarians build, and we need to fight for every level of power. And then once folks win those elections, they need to use that power to unrig the system itself. So we can dig into what that means, but I lay out how everyone here can be part of doing that plan. And if we do, we have a brighter tomorrow.
All right. This is my favorite, one of my favorite parts of the book. Ben has a chapter called This is the Plan. And then he goes, starting with this week, he goes through the next decade. So let me start you with this week, Ben. The at home, inflation is burning, gas prices are shooting up again, and Americans are suffering. There's a cost of living crisis that is being driven by Trump and the MAGA Republicans, MAGA takeover of the Republican Party, corruption crisis, competence crisis, and chaos crisis. So, and it all feeds into those costs. That's where it hits
we
the
all
road.
pay the price for every one of those.
We are paying the price for the corruption, lack of competence, and chaos. Let me start you with this week. Talk to us about what should we do in response to what's happening this week. Todd Blanche is moving, Trump's crony AG in the Senate, in the House. A massive bill just passed with 6 Democratic votes. The NDAA, it includes elements of the SAVE Act. You have another place in here where you talk about Russians describe election day as the voting because it's not an actual election. That's what Trump wants to do. The Iran war, total debacle. Talk about this week, Ben. What is the plan for us this week?
So this week, the world's on fire. It's a total mess. People feel it in their guts, in their bones. The thing this week is after you leave your review on Amazon, which I'm grateful for, by the way, and whatever online bookseller you might be using. After that, the plan this week is to pick up your phone and think through who are 5 people 5 friends who either live in a place where elections might be hyper close or have friends who might live in that kind of place. Call them, check in, and make a plan that each of you is going to reach out to 5 more friends. There's, in fact, I quote Abraham Lincoln in the book. He said, keep a constant watch on the most doubtful voters, and from time to time have them talked to by those in whom they have the most confidence. That was 1841. Abraham Lincoln, he was talking to the Whig Party, which clearly didn't take his advice because who's voting for Whigs these days? But Lincoln, he knew from politics. And that's the same thing that actually is the biggest difference right now. Nobody trusts anyone. No one trusts politicians. They trust the contrarian. People don't trust the media, but they still have people in their lives that they trust. And what I map out is that, in fact, if a group of friends gets involved, especially in a local election, state legislative election, you can tip the outcome of the race. The margins are incredibly small. And the way that Trump and the far right have power now comes back to rules set by state legislatures, sometimes years ago, sometimes in the last few months, that are rigging congressional maps across the country. So this is the moment to spread your map out, figure out where the close districts are, actually go through in the book where these districts are, practical stuff that you can do, and then make a plan to talk to the folks who have the most confidence in you, who you can affect or build a team with so you can do that kind of organizing. And it might feel small until you realize that there's a row of dominoes that stretches out from you to these close races that are nearby, and sometimes they're in states like my state of Wisconsin. that goes to how the rules are set at state legislatures for how voting and elections are conducted, which then goes to whether the future elections will be free and fair and whether maps for state legislature and Congress will be fair. The plan to unrig the whole country literally starts with what the 1,300 people watching this stream live right now and all the folks watching later decide to do this week. And it's so much closer than you realize if you know where to look. The ability to unrig this entire American political system in a moment of crisis. So that is how we take the fury about gas prices and turn it into action, so that the gas prices fuel the democracy and justice and economic opportunity movement that we need in this country.
Um, Talk to me about where we are in Wisconsin, in Michigan. There's been some turbulence in those places. Describe the lay of the land and how that fits in with your theory of change.
Sure. So what we're experiencing right now is what happens when a party loses a presidential election, loses control of Congress. It has a big debate internally about what the strategy should be, what the message should be, who the candidates should be. We'll have a presidential primary. There's a whole lot of people who want to run for president before 28. And Wisconsin and Michigan both have very late primaries, August 3rd in Michigan, I believe. Wisconsin's August 11th. And there are, candidates who represent different parts of the party and different parts of the big tent. There's a debate about who has the best chance of winning, who would do the best job if they win. To me, the fundamental thing we all need to hold in our minds is that whoever comes out of those primaries in the Wisconsin governor's race, the Michigan Senate race, we can win if we unite and fight. And it is essential that everybody commit. Whether or not you agree with the candidates on any specific particular thing, we know the difference between, in Wisconsin, Tom Tiffany running for governor, Republican. He was one of the Republicans in the House that voted to throw out the Electoral College votes in 2020. This is the guy who's voted for abortion bans. This is a guy who voted to cut $1 trillion from healthcare to give tax cuts for rich people. Donald Trump said, Tom Tiffany's been with me every step of the way. His primary was getting Trump's endorsement, had nothing to do with voters. And because he got Trump's endorsement, he'll be the Republican for governor. So if you want a guy who thought Trump should have been handed the 2020 election to be in charge of certifying the 2028 election, support Tom Tiffany. If you think people should decide, then whoever people decide on for the Democratic nominee, that person you have to fight for in Wisconsin. And any of the candidates, if we come together, can beat Tom Tiffany and ensure there's democracy in my state. Michigan, U.S. Senate campaign, two very different candidates. Different views on a bunch of different things. Either of those folks would make a night and day difference, both in terms of the individual votes on different issues, but most of all, to ensure that Trump's henchmen don't run the U.S. Senate and get to run the confirmation process for whoever would try to get on the U.S. Supreme Court. If a vacancy opens up in the next couple of years, that will echo for years what happens. The majority control is actually the thing that has the biggest impact of all. So this, debate is healthy, debate is fine. People have all kinds of different views about the different candidates, but our collective job is to remember the stakes and join together to ensure that the nominees become the next senator from Michigan and next governor of the state of Wisconsin.
And the continuing with the this theme of unite, putting the differences on the margins and finding the big issues like the composition of the United States Supreme Court that unify us. Do how should I put this? I believe in the Big Ten. So I spend, as you know, Ben, I spend a fair amount of time talking to those in the center and even to conservatives. And I think there's a moment because the Trump cost corruption, competence, and chaos crises have so thoroughly disgusted those in the center right, and even some erosion in the MAGA movement. But do members of the pro democracy movement have an obligation to try to find that center or to avoid provocations. If you don't have jurisdiction over arresting Benjamin Netanyahu, should you be pouring fuel on the flames or instead focusing on the five C's that we're talking about? What's your philosophical view of these issues in the news, which some people around the country who want to find consensus may be scratching their heads a little bit? I know some of my center right folks are asking me, why the provocations? Why not come together as Magyar did in Hungary, for example, around the issues that unify us?
So for any elected official, there are going to be some things that are a huge focus for them that are part of the movement that they come into power with that they're going to focus on. And it's, for some people it's ethanol, and for, some people it's issues around Israel and Gaza, and for some people it's, I'm not tuned into California politics, but I'm sure there's some central issue that's central to Californians right now in the governor's race. The reality is, this is a big country with a lot of people who have a lot of different deep and abiding passions, sometimes connected to who they are, sometimes connected to their philosophy. And also, when you're going to voters, the voters who wind up tipping elections, I write in the book, swing voters and voters who might or might not vote, they have something in common, almost by definition, which is that they don't put politics at the center of their lives. They have often very deeply held values and views, but they care about other stuff. They're not watching the political news. If you do surveys and you talk to people who've swung back and forth, they say they let the news come to them. They don't seek out the news. They're less likely to be watching Substack Lives. I'm guessing that just about everyone who watches our conversation knows who they're going to vote for, uh, which party they'll vote for in 2028. And we don't yet know who the candidates are going to be. And that's appropriate given how vast the philosophical fundamental differences are between the parties. But if you're in a place where you're like, they're all so far away from you, real life is here, politics is over here, they're so far away that in the distance, you can't quite tell which one is which. You reach those voters by talking about the things in their lives, the stuff that feels like it's right at home. And that is how incredibly mind-bendingly expensive it is to fill your gas tank, to fill your grocery cart, to find a way to get a roof over your head. And that when we're finding ways to reach the voters who are not trying to think about politics, coming back over and over and over to the things that touch them and their concerns, listening to them and speaking to their concerns, that is the path to being able to win, especially in the toughest races in the country.
Apropos of that, you talk a lot in the book about uh, the importance of hyperlocal races and your experience, school board races and such, which are often the ones that most directly touch people's lives. They interact with the life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That is the concept. Democracy is
Well,
not some
idea.
big
Yeah.
abstract thing. We want to have our lives. And people can't afford, because of Donald Trump and the MAGA mob now, MAGA take over the Republican Party, they can't afford to be alive, Ben. That is the cost crisis. Tell us a little bit about the plan when it comes to those hyperlocal races.
Absolutely. So I talk in the book about as local a race as you can get, a race for De Pure Common Council. And this race happened to generate national headlines because the Republican in De Pure, Wisconsin, which is near Green Bay, if you haven't spent much time in Northeast Wisconsin lately, the Republican in that race was a fake elector who tried to overturn the 2020 elections. She was in the Wisconsin Capitol signing fraudulent documents to participate in a coup to reject the president-elect of the United States in favor of a guy who wanted to be king. So this is someone who is as bad as it gets when it comes to this giant issue of democracy. If she had succeeded, then the unbroken string of transfers of power based on presidential elections would have ended. So you might think if you want to beat her in an election, you should point out that she was part of a conspiracy to destroy American democracy, a plot against our country. But no. What I write about is Pamela Gantz, who was a poll worker in De Pere, who was infuriated by what Kelly Rue, the fake elector, did. Pamela Gantz decided to challenge her for her city council seat. And what she did is the exact right thing. She went out and talked to voters to hear about what they cared about. And what she found is that there was a highway interchange that was the thing that was on everybody's mind. So she focused her message on making sure that the highway interchange would work for everyone so you could cut down on everybody's commute. Her background, she helped people to stay in their homes and they're facing foreclosure. So she talked about housing in their community in De Pere. It was De Pere, De Pere, De Pere, De Pere. And that road project, was probably the biggest issue. Pamela Gantz beat Kelly Rue, and now we don't have a fake elector on the De Pere City Council. So I say in the book, as I said then, as the state party chair, if you want to save democracy, talk about roads. Talk about things that are concrete for people who are not hair on fire about the democracy crisis. If you're hair on fire about the democracy crisis, you're already on the side of fighting to save democracy, which means you need to go out and find people that are not thinking about that and find out what they're thinking about and connect with them. Listening is the most fundamental skill to political persuasion and building a winning coalition in politics. And that works at every level, but it starts at home. Now, the other side of this is local elected officials make decisions that affect every level of power. City councils in Wisconsin approve the budgets for polling places for elections. So if you want to make sure there's a polling place near the college campus in each of the different neighborhoods, across race and ethnicity and education levels, you want to make sure everyone has the ability to vote without waiting in line forever. It's city politics that wind up determining whether that works. And that can have, in a state like Wisconsin, where elections over and over come down to 4 votes a precinct, that can determine the president of the United States.
The energy that Ben brings to this battle and the wisdom are why Nancy Pelosi says he's the best state party leader in the country. I see it firsthand. I'm very fortunate to work with Ben, our pro-democracy efforts at Democracy Defenders, where his sole national partner, and he and I are working. I like to think of it as cloning the Wikler approach. So we have it everywhere, working with wonderful folks around the country because we really need it at the hyperlocal level, which we've talked about. At the state level, we talked about Wisconsin and Michigan. Ben, I now want to bring you to the national level. I saw a poll this morning. The Democrats are up plus 11 on the generic ballot. I think that's probably, polls, you want to look at the trends, not at any particular result, but the gap has been trending up because of this crisis of cost that is driven by corruption, competence, chaos crises. Talk to me about what you are seeing and what is the plan for the House and for the Senate, our 2 big national bellwether institutions. And then if you can, I have no idea how to turn that ring off. I don't even know why it's ringing. And then, Ben, if I'm getting a lot of background from one of us, so I'm going to go off it might be another device. Yeah, whatever it was, you fixed it. Talk to us about the national scene, and I'll go off my headset in case that's what's causing. No, you fixed the problem. Go ahead, Ben.
All right. So we have a huge advantage on the generic ballot. We don't know exactly how big it is. We know that people are furious. We know that people who pay no attention to politics and vote for change, if they don't like what's going on, they're going to vote for change. And people who pay a lot of attention to politics and vote for the folks who are going to fight for the specific policies they support. Right now, they can see Democrats and Democratic aligned independents are where the possibility of progress actually lies. So that's a winning combination. But the key thing is to turn that into wins in the places that normally seem out of reach. So in the House, that means winning too big to steal. That means adding to the map. That means fighting in places that Republicans thought of as safe, including the dummy Mander districts in Texas, where Republicans thought that they were guaranteeing themselves red seats and might in fact turn into more Democratic seats. That means making absolutely sure we are locking down and winning in the toss-up seats, like in Wisconsin's third congressional district. I write about in the book as a kind of paradigmatic example. It's a toss-up seat. Derek Van Orden, disaster congressman, but also Wisconsin's first congressional district. There's so many seats. Wherever you live in this country, wherever you're watching this from, you're probably within driving distance of a swing congressional district where you can get involved, and you're certainly in clicking distance of a place where you can chip in some money. So win the House. The US Senate, the only way to get there is winning at least a couple of seats in states that Trump won by double digits, which normally very hard. This cycle, very possible. So let's win the US Senate. And then we have a check on Trump's ability to put in US Supreme Court justices, other federal judges. We have the power of the purse with the budget, and we have the power to start doing oversight and accountability, which has been in utterly short supply under this Republican Congress. But don't stop there. As I point out in the book, and as you and I talk about all the time, the most critical defense we have against a Trumpian dictatorship is that elections are run not by the federal government, but by the states. And what that means is that if we win in the states that will determine the next presidential election, this cycle, if we have pro-democracy governors, secretaries of state, attorneys general, especially if we win state legislatures that can dictator-proof their states by passing new laws, that allows us to have free and fair elections and the peaceful transfer of power in 2028. And this is why it's a multi-year plan, because the best way to protect 2028 elections is to win at the state level in 2026. We can win trifectas in Wisconsin, both chambers of the legislature and the governor, in Michigan, in Pennsylvania, in Arizona for the first time in more than half a century. In New Hampshire, can flip all the way from bright red to bright blue this election cycle. Nevada, we can win a governing trifecta. Alaska could be a multi-party democracy, pro-democracy trifecta there. We could win the governorship. Mary Peltola could win the U.S. Senate race. We could win the lone House seat, and we could have coalitions in both legislative chambers. We do all that. And by the way, in Georgia, Keisha Lance Bottoms for governor, she can block Republican attempts to gerrymander that state before 2028, which can help protect the future of a Democratic House majority. Those state races get so much less attention, money, volunteer energy, but those races have these huge knock-on consequences. And you turn out a voter for a state legislative race, they're going to vote for senator and House as well. So it's like a multiplier effect, which that basket of enormous, it's like a gift basket of delight for democracy. I talk state by state in the book about exactly how to plug into those efforts. And if we do that this fall, turning the chaos, the corruption, the cost, and the competence crises into fuel for a democracy engine that is powered from the state level on up, there's a bright future for this country.
I love alliteration. Ben Wikler, this is the plan. How
This is
to
the plan.
End America's Meltdown and Save Democracy. Available at a fine bookseller near you. Online, a bricks and mortar bookseller. Patronize your local booksellers. Ask them for This Is the Plan. It is flying off the shelves. We are so lucky to have you as a member of the Contrarian family. I know what you're looking forward to, and that's getting out there and continuing your book tour. I'll tell you what I'm looking forward to. On Monday, we'll be back with Coffee with the Contrarians with Joyce Vance. Later in the week with Adrian Elrod and April Ryan. Contrarians, we love you. We'll see you all day long, every day here at the Contrarian. I'm going to roll off here and start working on my weekly column. Ben Wikler, keep it up. He has got the plan. Bye, Contrarians.
Bye, Contrarians.
Thank you, friends.
Bye, Norm. Thanks so much.